Whoa, Jen, looking at a codex.
Yeah, it's my Sisters of Battle codex. It's pretty cool. There's a lot of really awesome stuff in here.
Hey, one of my favourite things about 40k is all the awesome lore and artwork.
Yeah, but I found something missing. I can't take knights, it seems.
Well, you can as an ally, but knights aren't part of the Sisters of Battle army.
That seems super silly. I'm gonna change that. We're gonna build a Sisters of Battle knight. Woohoo!
And while Jen builds a Sisters of Battle knight, I'm gonna make up some lore to make that make sense. It's gotta be a knight household like aligned with an ecclesiarchy world. That makes sense.
Whenever I start one of these videos off, I like to concept sketch out all of my ideas. I find that this really helps refine all of the buzzing ideas I have in my head and get them down on paper. The first thing I did was grab the Knight Lancer, which is the knight I'll be building today, and I grabbed a concept sketch of our Martyred Lady, which is the faction that my Sisters of Battle are from. So just grabbing a couple images, I started off with some candles. I wanted to include these because they're kind of an iconic piece of the Sisters of Battle. I wanted to put these on the shoulder pads because I thought they'd look the coolest at the top.
I can see huge amounts of candles dripping with wax all down the front of the shoulders. It'll be interesting to see how you realize this on the model.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, I had to add in some stained glass windows to this model. I wasn't sure how I was going to interpret this, but for now, I thought it would be cool on the top and maybe even on the shield. And lastly, I had noticed on the Sisters of Battle model, the Exorcist tank, this really cool pipe organ. I thought this would look super cool on the top of this knight.
You know that pipe organ is a missile launcher, right?
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping we can get rid of the missiles, or I don't know, maybe they're stuck in there.
So this is some kind of musical instrument come exhaust for the knight?
Whatever the Emperor pleases. I also noticed that this tank had a couple of braziers on the front of them and thought this could look pretty cool on the top as well. The last thing I need to do was give this concept sketch a little bit of color. So going in again with those Our Martyred Lady colors, which consist of red, black, and a little bit of gold and silver.
Now I can see here you're filling the energy shield on its wrist with stained glass panels. That's ambitious. Have you got any idea how you're going to actually do that?
Well, having done a test before with my cathedral build, which you can see up here if you'd like to check it out, I've already made stained glass windows before, so I'm going to use a very similar method on this model.
Now Jen managed to find a lovely model of a church pipe organ transport online, but we're not going to mention it too deeply because we don't want anyone getting in trouble.
Yeah, I just wanted a very specific part.
But they did a great job.
I also picked up these candles from my mini factory as well, just to add on top. I probably want to make some of my own, but just for a safeguard, we've got some here.
And they're from Vivictus Minis. Now, Jen, I should have known when you gave me that cheeky look. Your version of how am I going to get this done involved me. So what are you doing here?
To get things started, I had to measure out the size of the model so we could put it into Blender and make sure everything printed correctly.
We could put it into Blender?
Well, I helped a little bit.
All right, Blender, this is rapidly and unexpectedly becoming my wheelhouse. So I simply grabbed the model, scaled it down to the appropriate proportions of the top of the knight, and then I edited this file, deleting areas that I didn't think would be appropriate for the top of the knight, and also pulling the missiles out of those tubes.
I noticed you deleted the central section as well. I actually think this was a really smart choice in the end.
Being the tallest knight in all of 40k, that central column just kind of took up too much space.
So jumping into Illustrator, I started creating my stained glass windows. I had a general idea of how I wanted these to look, but I wanted to move away from the saintly gods that I had used last time. Instead, create more generic sort of windows that could be used for, well, everyday use. To include a couple of icons from Our Martyred Lady. This included their logo, which they have of a cross and a skull in the middle. I wanted to put this in the stained glass window, as well as a couple of fleur-de-lis. Window all done, it was time to move on to the shield. Now I knew already I wanted this to have a stained glass design, but I definitely wanted to keep it nice and simple. The first thing I did was to eyeball it. I don't do measurements, I don't do precision, I just go in and wing it and pray for the best. So in this case, I just took a photo and roughly traced out the design and put it on top. To fill out the rest of the shield, I just used the crosshatch pattern that we had before, and I thought this looked pretty good.
Now ultimately we would go on to find out that this crosshatching was slightly thicker than probably you'd do next time.
Yeah, it's a pretty fine fine line you have to draw when it comes to printing things in a 3D printer. You don't want to make them too thick and you don't want to make them too thin. So it does require a little bit of trial and error.
So Jen had made these awesome vector models and I took them into Blender, converted them into meshes and extruded them out. It's really simple to join these objects and create some very nice 3D models that could be used printed in clear resin for Jen's stained glass windows. We've already tried and tested this technique before in our stained glass windows video. So as Jen said earlier, if you want a deeper dive on that, go check it out in that video. I will say that one thing we had learned though is to reduce or shrink the size of the pieces of metal between the stained glass windows. So I made sure to make these quite subtle on the final iteration of the shield.
Good morning, everyone. It's time to check on the 3D prints. It's been overnight, so I'm hoping that they printed. It's always a mixed bag with these kind of things, so let's have a look. Yay! I think that they printed really, really well. So I'm gonna take these off, give them a wash, and we can have a really good look at them. So time for a 3D wash montage.
Moment of truth. I was kind of eyeballing these measurements to make this work.
What?
That's pretty good,
That is-
right?
Considering, yeah, you literally just eyeballed the measurements. That's amazing.
Like, you're gonna need a little bit of putty, but compared to carving away, like, this is gonna go on really nicely.
And let's be honest, it's better than Forge World, really.
Just as much work, yeah.
Yay! I love
You're
it.
gonna make the tallest knight in 40k even taller.
It's gonna be great.
So the other thing that we kind of eyeballed, this was the stencil designs that Jen made up for the stained glass. Will these fit? Slightly too big.
Little bit of dremeling back, little bit of sanding.
Well, I actually think just print it again because they take half an hour to print, and I can just down the file size down slightly. I actually did print 2 sizes, so this is slightly smaller. So close. I think if I print that like 5% smaller, it'll fit fine and we'll be good to go.
So as you conduct the due diligence of properly washing and cleaning all of these resin pieces, I have a question. Why a Knight Lancer?
Well, actually, the Lancer's a knight I've loved for a really long time. So the sisters have a line of these really cool models that incorporate sci-fi and medieval. They look really awesome, and I thought the Lancer kind of incorporates this as well.
You're talking about the Sacrosancts?
Absolutely. So I think that the knight kind of follows along with them really well.
And where did you get this Lancer?
I acquired it from a friend. It was a gift.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. you took the Lancer straight off my hobby shelf.
And hey, what a cool project to work on.
Absolutely.
And here is an extreme close-up of me scrubbing the pieces. Look at all those bubbles. Relaxing.
That's more soap than I've seen in a year.
Now, Dave put on a second print and we decided to make the bars in the little cross hatching a little bit thinner, and we also made the file a little smaller. These are the new prints that we did. They definitely look a lot better. I love the thinner lines. I think that the stained glass windows will come out looking pretty good. So usually we would chuck these in the curer to, well, cure. We have found with the clear resin that it's actually better off just putting these near the windowsill and letting them cure really slowly. If you put them in the curer, there's a tendency for them to go really yellow, so we're gonna just slowly bake them away until we're ready, and I think that they're fully cured and I can use them. In the meantime, I've got a knight to build, so let's get started.
Silly me had left the instructions on how to build this massive kit at home, but luckily enough I'd found them online, although it was extremely blurry, so I tried my best to fit all the pieces together and make sure everything was there. I also forgot how big the sprue tags can be on some of these pieces. I almost took my eye out a couple of times pulling them off, but luckily enough there was no damage done and I was able to build my knight. night. I started off by making sure each piece was nice and clean and building it as the instructions said, kind of going from top to bottom.
Now, as you construct the torso, I'm reminded of the Forge World Knight Porphyrion, which we already did. You're planning on fully painting this with a Sister of Battle something in it, right?
Well, my plan is to leave the top off of it so that I can paint the inside, but I don't have a victim to go inside it just yet. Maybe you guys can come up with something that could go inside.
What do you mean a victim? It's an unbelievable honor to pilot a noble knight.
Sure, but it looks a little cramped, let's be honest.
That's all right. Their mind is linked to the knight and they see with its eyes. They are a giant upon the battlefield.
I still feel like they could give it a bit more room like an Evangelion where there's a bit of room to move around.
Well, I mean, in an Evangelion, you're basically in like a liquid. I prefer being able to breathe.
So I knew I didn't want to glue this model 100% down until I knew the pose I wanted to have. But I did glue a couple of pieces together, just for some structural integrity and, well, because I was getting a bit lazy and just really wanted this thing to stand up. My goodness, blue tack and Forge World resin do not mix. This thing kept falling over every time I tried, so I decided to glue some pieces down.
And the Forge World Knights are amazing in how posable they are. There's a lot of different pieces that can be posed in many ways, but this also means they're very hard to dry fit or get a solid idea of their pose prior to gluing parts of them, unlike the plastic kits, which typically only have between 1 or 2 poses you can swap between.
So moving on to the legs, again, just cleaning these up and making sure they fit nicely together. Thinking about poses, I kind of wanted one of his legs to be standing up, and at this point they kind of look like weird chicken legs. I think I want to put one on a rock possibly, and maybe having the knight lance something could be really cool too. Once I was happy with how the pose was looking, it was time to glue everything into place. This meant properly and for the last time, so there were no moving pieces. I made sure to keep off all the armor panels though, because I knew moving forward I'd want to probably airbrush these and keep them separate. This is something we'd learnt from our night video, so I took that advice on board. So once everything was glued in place, it was time to start converting, which was my favorite part of this project. Starting off with the hull, I went ahead and glued on the organ pipe that we had printed previously. It did require a little bit of gap filling, but not too much work, and it sat so nicely on top.
Yeah, I was pretty happy with how the fit had come out, given that we basically just eyeballed and roughly measured to replicate this indent in Blender. The only thing I noticed is it does lean a bit back if placed back on the carapace. So I'm not sure if mounting it further back or mounting it more central, but then blocking part of the driver's hatch was the best way to go.
So to cover up some of the green stuff work I had done on the organ, I wanted to put candles on the top. This would let me hide any of my messy work and looked really, really cool. I added these on the top of the hull as well as the shoulders and started to create some dripping effects with some green stuff. I used the candles that we had 3D printed and also created some of my own to add and make it look like it was really impactful. Gotta be careful because it does look a bit like a fire hazard here, but it should be all good.
It's okay, these things can literally walk through magma and lava, so it'll be fine.
The last bit of conversion I needed to include was the stained glass windows that we had made previously. These slotted really nicely into place, so I could just glue these in with no trouble.
Yeah, there's a little gap between the edges of each of them, but with the way this energy shield works, I kind of am not sure if this is a stained glass window or if it's like an energy or holographic projection of a stained glass window. And I love that I don't know. It could be either way.
It's pretty epic, I'm not gonna lie.
So with all those pieces in place, Jen, it was time to wrap it up and we can check out your work.
Here's the big reveal.
As always, we would love to thank all the patrons that support us to make these videos. These projects with massive Forge World kits, ambitious conversions, and crazy turnaround times are only possible thanks to all the lovely support of our Mini Club patrons. You can join our exclusive Mini Club Discord and take part in our monthly mini reviews by signing up. Check out the patron link in the description and come join us for the fun.
I really adore this conversion. I think I made it look sort of like super epic-y original 40k with a good mixture of modern 40k.
Well, we'll be back with a painting video. A night is a huge project, and with 2 videos a week, simply too much to build and paint in a single video. But
We definitely want to see some hype for a paint job though, so if you like this video, please give us a thumbs up so then we know that you guys really want to see this night painted up as much as I do.
you know what? There's a lot of loyalty going on with a sister's night. If this video gets like 100,000 views, I'm gonna customize a renegade night. I'm thinking a Dark Mechanicus night with AI constructs. Yeah, I've got some ideas.
Okay. Better hit that like button.
Bye.
That was cute.